Okay, good morning or good afternoon or good evening wherever you are. Welcome at week 4 of the Metropolitan Agriculture Open Online course. I hope everyone can hear me all right. If not, please say so in the chat box. We have another week. Sounds fine. Okay, that's good. We have another week of presentations, and this week we will be talking about the third strategy, the third value creation strategy called sustainable intensification. Please note this license whenever you're willing to share the word and all the slides, because the slides, as suggested last week by one of the participants, are now also available for download in PDF from the MetroAg course website. Quinn just posted the link in the chat box, so you can find it there, and you can find it, of course, on the website. Well, this is me, Sander Mager again. Last week Henk did the presentation. Maybe you remember me from week 2, and I will be taking you through this week's presentation. And this is what we're going to do today. We'll start with a short recap of the first 3 weeks. Then we'll be focusing on the third value creation strategy called sustainable intensification. I will give you 2 examples again of this strategy, 2 business examples. One is called New Mixed Farm and the second is called Greenport Shanghai. Like with the first 2 strategies, we will take a look at the value creation models from each of these projects, and we'll end off with some important learnings and, of course, the assignment to put on the forum. But first, a recap of what we talked about in the first 3 weeks of this course. What is metropolitan agriculture? And by now I hope that you can almost repeat it after me, but this is what metropolitan agriculture is. It is about innovative forms of agriculture, not only in a city, but also around a city and for the city. And we call them maybe even more the mega cities of the world, because 70% of the world's population will be living in cities by 2050. Well, what makes these innovative forms of agriculture unique? That's the fact that they not only focus on producing food, but they really create a triple P value. Values in terms of people values, in terms of planet values, and also in terms of profit values. But you might want to change that into prosperity values, because there's been a lot of discussion about what we mean with profit. Maybe prosperity is the better word for that. How do they do that? What makes these innovations metropolitan agriculture innovations? It's the fact that they are reintegrating agriculture. And when we say agriculture, we don't only mean the primary production, but the whole chain from primary production all the way to the retail and the consumer. They are reintegrating agriculture in that sense in the metropolitan environment. Economically reintegrating, spatially reintegrating, ecologically reintegrating, and culturally reintegrating. And by doing so, these forms of agriculture, these innovations, have a much better sustainability performance than traditional forms of agriculture. And when we're talking about traditional forms of agriculture, we mean the 3 forms that are mentioned here in this triangle. Talking about commercial agriculture, organic and environmental conservation agriculture, or urban agriculture. All 3 traditional forms of agriculture moving towards a centerpiece called metropolitan agriculture or MetroAg innovation. So we're not saying that everything should be replaced by metropolitan agriculture. We see it as a complement to the already existing strategies in agriculture. In week 2, I took you to 2 projects. The first one being a project around green care, where we said that the agricultural landscape offers what you could call a therapeutical environments for care patients to spend their time in and to recover. And the second project that I took you to was called Northern Frisian Woods, or in Frisian Noordelijke Friese Walden, where it was really a matter of using the fact that you are in a national landscape to come up with new product market combinations that really show that the fact that you are in that landscape is an asset for you and not a production limiting factor, but something that really adds value. We called the two projects in week 2 sustainable diversification, because it's about diversifying, but it's about diversifying in a sustainable way. It's about linking planet values to the needs of the urban or the metropolitan consumer. And last week, in week 3, Henk told you about a strategy called sustainable revaluation, where it's more a fact of trying to transform what we call intangible people values, values like authenticity, respect, into tangible assets, and making sure that those assets are associated with the product that is produced. And that's not just a matter of trying to improve what you're doing, it's about really redesigning your production and your products, and in that redesign process, putting sustainability at the core of your business case. So not a nice wrapping around it, but really at the core. And Henk told you about the project called Rondeel, that started from the question, what would happen if the chickens would design the hen house? And now a very successful business case in the Netherlands. And the second project that Henk told you about was called Mijn Boer, or My Farmer, translated in English. That has a lot to do with these product characteristics like authenticity and taste, and moving from a more cooperative perspective to really a new brand, because My Farmer, Mijn Boer is a brand that puts user-producer interaction in the middle of their proposal. So that's what we talked about in week 2 and week 3. So these were the first 2 value creation strategies. And this week we're going to talk about strategy number 3, called sustainable intensification. And now, when I was preparing this presentation last week, I found a draft set of conclusions from the upcoming Rio Plus 20 summit. That's a summit that will be taking place in June of this year, 20 years after the original Rio conference focusing on sustainable development. It's a UN conference. And in that draft set of conclusions, it states, we reaffirm the right to food and call upon all states to prioritize sustainable intensification of food production through increased investment in local food production, improved access to local and global agri-food markets, and reduced waste throughout the supply chain. Well, I found it striking that in such a draft set of conclusions, the word sustainable intensification is mentioned. But what do we mean with sustainable intensification? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to start with a short film clip that was brought to my attention by a good friend from MSU, who showed me a clip from Chipotle, and have a look at this clip before we talk further.
I was just guessing at numbers and figures, pulling the puzzles apart. Questions of science, science and progress don't speak as loud as my heart. Nobody said it was easy. It's such a shame for us to part. Nobody said it was easy. No one ever said it would be so hard. I'm going back to the start.
Okay, I hope everyone was able to see that movie clip from Chipotle called Back to the Start. And while we go back to the slides, let me say that I find it a bit exciting to talk to you about sustainable intensification, because I noticed on your, based on the post you put on our forum, that many of you are active in urban agriculture. And I think some of you might even have become active in urban agriculture as a response to the negative feelings you have with commercial agriculture. However, we're going to talk today about commercial agriculture, about industrial agriculture, intensive agriculture. And I wanted to show this clip by Chipotle to start our thinking, and also to start, as one of the participants called yesterday, to stretch your thinking a little bit. Because I think this clip clearly illustrates feelings that many people have with intensification or industrialization. And I would like to invite you to put in the chat box what you think the biggest problems are, or the biggest problems that you associate with intensive or industrial types of agriculture. So hoping that everyone will start typing now, and we get a whole load of information from our participants. I see Tricia is already starting typing. I'll wait a few moments before I continue. Waste, pollution and disease, Tricia says. Chemicals, Teresa says. Wait for a few more. Animal living conditions by Eileen. Disconnect between people and their food. Soil devastation. Pandemics. Disconnects. And Renee says, good morning. Well, good morning, Renee, to you too. We'll continue with this presentation because I think you're all right, of course. These are problems that are associated with intensive or industrial types of agriculture. And even more people are putting in negatives like genetic processes, disease, pest, the energy dependence, and nutrient depletion. And it's a right thing to ask yourself the question, well, if these problems exist, why do we still consider further intensification? Well, it might be good to get a perspective on the challenge we're faced with. And the FAO, that's the World Food and Agriculture Association of the UN, did a process 2 years back around the question how to feed the world in 2050. And they did a short analysis before they started that process. And they said, and you know, of course, some of these numbers, that the global population will increase by 2.3 billion inhabitants between now and 2050. And it's not only a matter of numbers, it's also a fact of a growing middle class, especially in developing countries like China and India. And those emerging middle class, or that emerging middle class, is intensifying this demographic explosion. And the fact that we have more people and more people in the middle class will require the world's farmers to grow at least 70% more food than we now produce. And keep in mind that it has taken us 10,000 years to get to our current agricultural production, and we have just 38 years left to almost double it. So the question really is, can we do this without intensification? And I'm not saying that intensification is the only way forward, because we have seen other approaches to MetroAg in weeks 2 and 3, and I know it's not only a matter of production, and we should also address our facts like our diet and how we distribute food and how we make sure that people have access to food. But the question is, I think, also, can we do this without intensification? And a few more things to keep in mind, that we are already farming roughly 38% of the Earth's surface. And of that 38%, that is already the best farmland in the world. And the striking thing is that the most fertile soils of our planet are found in deltas, where rivers flow into the ocean. But that's also where we in history started to make our settlements, and where now most big cities, most mega cities are. So that's again a complicating factor for using the fertile lands of this earth. And if we look at the rest of the earth, then the remainder is mostly covered by deserts, mountains, tundra, ice and other unsuitable growing areas. And the few remaining frontiers are then mainly in tropical forests and savannas, which are vital to the stability of the globe, especially as stores of carbon and biodiversity. And if you take a look at the graph on the right side of this slide, it indicates the growth of our world population and the declining number of arable land per capita in the coming years. And that alone might give you an impression on the need to intensify in some sense. And also keep in mind that global food production currently not only uses 40% or 38% of the world land, it also uses 70% of its water and is responsible for at least 35% of total greenhouse gas emissions from human activity. Maybe you know that on average we need 1 liter of water per calorie produced. But maybe you don't know that Israeli farmers are able to produce with 1/10 of that amount of water by using a very efficient system of drip irrigation. And meanwhile, in similar climates in northern India or in Pakistan, farmers need 20 to 30 liters per calorie produced. So that means alone that there's a 200 to 300 fold difference between the most and least efficient producers. And I think that's a clear indication that there are huge opportunities to be saving water, energy and reducing pollution and growing a larger amount of food. So where do we go from here? Well, we don't just hold meetings like FAO has done to address this big evil devil or dragon. What do? We innovate. And that, of course, is central to metropolitan agriculture innovation, MetroAg innovation. And if I say innovate, I think of trying to really redesign. We use that word in other sessions as well, what we are currently doing. And I ask you the question, what if we took all the concerns related to the old intensification, all the concerns that you just put in the Dropbox and you're right on, and if we took those concerns and turned them into design criteria for a new type of intensification, and type of intensification not having all these negative results, but a sustainable form of intensification. Would that be possible? Well, I think it is possible, and it would require us to look on 3 important notions. The first one is a more technical question, doing more with less. The second one is more a matter of how are we doing this, how are we relating to people. It's about cooperation to co-create, to work with what we call unlikely allies. And the third element is a spatial element and a cultural element, really reintegrating in the metropolitan environment. So if we look at these 3 elements, the first one, the technical one, is doing more with less, and it's about high eco-efficiency. And we know that closing loops can be very cost efficient, but at the same time be eco-efficient, or the other way around, depending on what your perspective is. But it's a way of combining eco-efficiency and cost efficiency. And it starts with the notion that waste is food, like people like Michael Braungart, author of the book Cradle to Cradle, has illustrated so clearly. And it also acknowledges that many of the losses and problems in the food system arise from what we could call improper connections, that we are no longer connected, and that is where the real problems start to originate from. Well, doing more with less could then be addressed by a strategy of spatial clustering, bringing different agricultural production units and different agriculture activities and non-agriculture activities spatially together in one location, and by chain integration, by trying to put all the different elements of the food chain in one company or in one activity. It would require technological investments, it would require physical investments, and to make those investments feasible in an economic sense, they require scale. And what you see on the right side of this slide are two ideas about doing more with less. The one is the first one on top is a design. It's not in practice, where we've really brought together all kinds of agricultural production in one facility, and it opens opportunities for plant production to be used as compost for mushrooms or leftovers for pig production, and all the way down to agriculture system where the very much fertilized water is used again in the greenhouse above. And that's not only something that we can talk about in theory, but it's been used in practice. The picture below is from the project called Eco Futura, and that's a combination of tomato growing in a greenhouse with on the bottom of the greenhouse basins where tilapia is grown in. And the tilapia fertilizes the water that's being used to grow the tomatoes on. A very interesting but technological approach to doing more with less. And we know very well that it's not just a matter of technological opportunities. It can't never be a case of design and implement things like that. We have experienced also in projects in the Netherlands with Transform that a technological approach can only be successful when it is embedded in a societal dialogue on how do we produce in our country, in our region, in our vicinity. And that's a question of really, are you willing to cooperate with people that are really opposed to you or were formerly opposed to you, and use them and use their concerns, like I just asked you, to identify what the real innovation agenda is. And critical in these processes is to be completely transparent. And I think if you do that, it would become possible to respect people and planet values while safeguarding the profit or the prosperity, or vice versa. From the perspective of a company, it would be possible to safeguard your profit by respecting people and planet and investing in good value creation on people and planet. And the picture on the right, that's a typical Dutch situation showing an apartment building with greenhouses immediately next door, shows that your allies or your opponents are sometimes only a footstep away, and it would be a really dumb thing to do to not start cooperating with these people, because they are in your backyard or you are in their backyard, and there is a relationship. So use that relationship and make it count. That's the thing that we say is central in cooperate to co-create. And then the third element is to reintegrate in the metropolitan region. And we talked about that in week 1 and in week 2 as well. We say that the tendency seems to be to push agriculture further and further away from cities. That results also in a lot of transport kilometers or miles. Producing in the metropolitan region would reduce that transport with a really considerable amount. Producing doing agricultural activities in that metropolitan region also would open the opportunity to tap into the rest of the metropolitan metabolism. For instance, by using urban waste and producing energy for that urban settlements. And That would give agriculture a much more central position in that metropolitan metabolism. It also opens up opportunities for repurposing abandoned buildings and vacant lands. And right now we are working with Michigan State University on projects in Detroit that are focusing precisely on that. How can you really reintegrate agriculture in a spatial sense and make agriculture a new economic driver of a city? And also, the picture on the last slide with the greenhouse next to it, the apartment building, illustrates the diversity of stakeholders, the nearness of stakeholders, and we really think that that's not a matter of possible conflict, but also an opportunity to create unlikely allies. Well, this might result in various innovations, and one of the innovations I want to show you is called agroparks, and the next clip is on this kind of innovation, agroparks.
Nowadays, a large part of the world's population lives in cities or urbanized areas, also in the Netherlands, a tendency that is increasingly growing. To ensure that life can be fully enjoyed in these urban areas, aspects such as the shortage of space, logistics, the need for space to live and work, recreation and enough food all demand the right solutions.
On the AgroPark, we make intelligent use of each other's knowledge and residual and byproducts, but also of the available space. As a result, there's more space left for landscape development.
The city, with all its inhabitants, needs lots of water, raw materials and energy, and moreover, it produces huge amounts of waste. Sustainable high-tech agroparks are a new kind of green business park, which could significantly help to solve these problems. Different types of agricultural companies are brought together and are being interconnected within the agropark. This not only enables an agropark to supply food, the clever processing of residual and byproducts also creates opportunity for new agricultural services, such as energy production and water purification. Companies are no longer scattered over a wide area, but are close to each other and connected to each other. In this way, the agropark is much more than just the sum of its parts. Agroparks guarantee intensive large-scale production, making investments possible that enable more environmentally and energy-friendly ways of working. One company uses the waste materials of another as a raw material and a source of energy. And since transporting animals is no longer necessary, these companies are more animal-friendly as well. This is not only an enormous step forward with regard to animal welfare, but it also significantly reduces the number of transport kilometers and the risk of animal diseases spreading. Because the production per square meter is much higher in agroparks, less space is required for agricultural production. The space thus saved can be used for other purposes, such as residential use, work and recreation. Innovative high-tech agroparks produce food for large urban centers in the direct vicinity of those urban centers. This makes agroparks a good example of metropolitan agriculture.
By producing electricity on the agropark, we come full circle. The electricity is sold on the national network, while the surplus of heat is used to grow paprikas in the greenhouse. You see, this innovation not only strengthens employment, but at the same time enables the agropark to expand in the future. And just as important, through this intensive and large-scale production, sustainability is no longer expensive.
Agroparks bring added value in all three aspects of sustainability: people, planet and profit. The first examples of agroparks have already become operational, like Agriport A7.
Large lots and a higher production per acre, a glass fibre connection for unlimited data traffic, and an on-site possibility to use each other's residual and byproducts, like electricity, processed water, carbon dioxide and heat. The companies on this agropark actually consider sustainability as an excellent opportunity to lower their costs and, in the long run, strengthen their market position.
Agroparks are a showcase of metropolitan agriculture, creating new links between the city and agriculture. These new links enable more energy, environmentally and animal-friendly production, save space, and make sustainable products less expensive. The agropark is much more than just the sum of its parts.
Okay, I hope that everyone was able to see that movie and we didn't encounter many technological problems. If not, the film is again on YouTube and you received the link to the YouTube movie also with today's announcement for this presentation. So this concept of agroparks is indeed about monocultures in that sense, because it's about commercial production. But it is also a matter of bringing these different production units together in one spatial location, and not only bringing them there together, but also try to link them and integrate them to really organize added value and to create what is called in the film more than the sum of its parts. So if we take this concept of agroparks, the film shows you the example of a big agropark in the Netherlands. It's called Agriport A7, but you can also see it on a somewhat smaller scale. And we have a project in the Netherlands that's called New Mixed Farm. And their vision really states that word agropark, where they say an agropark holds out the prospect of closing loops, reducing transport and efficient land use. The whole idea of new mixed farm starts with the idea of the old mixed farm. You see here the four entrepreneurs that are working together in this project. It's in Horst aan de Maas in the province of Limburg in the Netherlands. And they took this concept of the traditional mixed farm, where in the old days a farmer had a few chicken who fertilized his land, and he used the leftovers from his plant production to feed, for instance, his pigs, and in that sense he only had a few small numbers of animals and a small production on his own side, but he sort of closed the loops on his farm. And when we were scaling up, when the old industrialization or the old intensification took place within agriculture, we lost the connections that were so central to the old concept of the new mixed farm. And these 4 farmers in the Netherlands said, why don't we try to bring that idea, the closed loops, back into our production. What the concept of new mixed farm is a combination of pig farming, of poultry farming, of greenhouse farming, and a joint waste management production and energy production, a waste management facility and energy production. And these 4 farmers, I would call them real heroes in that sense, because they have really tried to innovate, and they have encountered a lot of problems because of the scale that is required for a concept like this. But still, what they are saying is we are trying to get a real license to grow, and that license is earned or granted by the fact that their kind of production is much better in terms of sustainability of all 3 Ps than traditional commercial agriculture. And if you look at this infographic of their project, it shows what they are doing. They are trying to bring on one spatial location the different agricultural production units together. And in that sense, it makes it possible to really close loops. What they are doing is bringing these units together, for instance, to make it possible to organize an underground piping system for manure to a central waste processing and energy plant. And that underground piping system takes out all the transport of manure over the roads. And as you might know, the transport of manure can be a real source of pollution, and also of animal diseases are being spread by transport of manure. So an underground piping system makes it really safe and environmental friendly to do so. The other thing that they are doing is I call it just chain integration. They are trying to bring in or integrate the slaughterhouse in the production unit, for instance, of the chickens. And this again takes out a lot of transport of the chickens to a slaughterhouse. And that's not only again a matter of transport kilometers and the environmental pollution that comes along with it, but also taking out a potential source of animal diseases spreading. And that has been quite an issue in the Netherlands with recent outbreaks of avian influenza, but also on the sides of pigs with foot and mouth disease, for instance. So taking out transport of live animals takes out transport kilometers, takes out the potential contamination for animal diseases, and is also, in terms of animal welfare, a really interesting thing to do, because a lot of the stress that animals encounter is or takes place in that final part of the production system, where animals are put in cages, put in trucks, and are transported to the slaughterhouse. The interesting thing is that to really realize this concept, it requires scale, because for instance, for a slaughterhouse to be economically feasible, it really requires a scale of at least 1 million chickens, and that is what this chicken company in New Mixed Farm is producing on a yearly basis. So you could say 1 million chickens, especially in the Dutch situation, that's quite a lot of chickens, and in that sense, this is quite a huge farm, and people could call this a mega stable or a mega farm. But if you look on a somewhat different scale level and look at how big is a normal slaughterhouse, then the slaughter facility at New Mixed Farm is the smallest slaughtering facility in the Netherlands, and probably even one of the smallest slaughter facilities in northwestern Europe. So in that sense, the scale is much smaller than traditional agriculture. So scale then again is more a question of the choices you made than the input of the discussion. The interesting part is, of course, also here the bioenergy plan, because in New Mixed Farm, every production unit, whether it's the chickens or the pigs or the greenhouse, still is operated by the original farmers themselves who were at first not participating in New Mixed Farm. And what they did is not only spatial clustering, but also they started this idea of the bioenergy plant. And that bioenergy plant produces compost, fertilizer, heat, CO2, electricity, biogas, and clean water. And it does so by really combining all the waste flows and turning them into valuable products. Excuse me. And these valuable products are sometimes used in the production system of New Mixed Farm again, but they can also be used for external processes. So part of the energy is, for instance, fed into the electricity grid, and the remaining digested in the composting plant can be sold as a fertilizer again. So in all kinds of senses, you could say that New Mixed Farm really does better in terms of the 3 P's of sustainability than the traditional producing system. In terms of people, it addresses the question of animal welfare. It takes out all animal transport, and that's a very important factor if it comes to animal welfare. In terms of planet, it really reduces the emissions to the nature, and much more efficient use of nutrients. And in terms of profit, of course, this is an economically profitable proposition for these farmers. But mind you, the investments needed for something like this are again also used. So there really has to be value in this. And I think these farmers are on the right trajectory, even though they were opposed with a lot of concerns from especially their direct neighbors, because this is about industrial production and it will take place in what you could call the backyard of the other people living in that region. And it does raise, of course, concerns related to spreading of animal diseases to human beings. And things like that show that it is critical to involve all the different stakeholders in an innovation process like this, and not do this just with your traditional chain partners, but involve the local government, involve societal groups, involve NGOs, and really cooperate with them. Make sure that you take their concerns seriously and translate them into design criteria for innovations like this. So an interesting implementation of the agro-park idea. The second example takes it to an even bigger level or a higher scale. And the project I'm going to talk to you now is called Greenport Shanghai, and the logo for this project had a payoff sentence that said, "Better city, better agriculture, better life." You might remember that in 2010 the World Expo was hosted by the city of Shanghai, and the slogan of the World Expo was "Better city, better life." And some of our Chinese partners said, well, maybe agriculture is the connecting word between the city and the better life, so the real slogan should be better city, better agriculture, better life. And what you see here is an artist impression of how Greenport Shanghai Agro Park might turn out to be once. And it's a design, a master plan design, that was really focused on unlocking man's, the Chinese farmers, and nature's potential, and by doing so integrate to improve the efficiency of Chinese agriculture. There is a movie on Greenport Shanghai. The long version is on YouTube, and you can have a look at that link. We'll show you the short version of 4 minutes now.
The world is urbanizing. In the next few years, more than half the world population will be living in cities. Many of these cities are typical delta metropoles, usurping the space most suited for agricultural production. China is a case in point. Just look at its population densities. On the basis of Dutch knowledge and experience, a master plan was created. A master plan for a new kind of agropark that offers high profits for the entrepreneur, offers high-quality product to consumers, and fully respects the environment. The plan consists of different layers, from ecological design to water infrastructure, and from waste management to transportation. The basic principle is a circular economy, in which the rest and byproducts of one unit are converted to be used as the input of another one. Upon this basic structure, a number of different scenarios have been conceived and calculated. Because at the end of the day, it is not the planners, but the participating entrepreneurs who will decide its final outlay. The choice is theirs, and so it should be. The trade park and the business center will be one of Shanghai's future nodes for fresh products. By integrating producing, processing and trade, Greenport Shanghai offers food safety and quality control in the whole chain. Greenport Shanghai will be the brand standing for high-quality food. Across the high-tech glass houses we go. These are closed systems with biological pest control. They not only produce sublime vegetables and flowers, but act as sun collectors, delivering energy. Soaring over food processing plants, situated in a quiet, pleasant park, you can still see the infrastructural elements of the park, the solar cell system roofing, the pipelines of its circular economy. It is a high-tech and ecological landscape. The central processing unit applies the principles of industrial ecology and cradle to cradle. It provides the agropark's zero emission of waste and independency of fossil fuel. Because of the CPU, Greenport Shanghai does not use energy, it produces energy. The multi-storied pig stables with grass roofs offer animal comfort for optimal animal welfare and optimal growth. The chicken stables with integrated processing, closed livestock systems with maximal hygiene and minimal transport to prevent contamination with animal diseases. Dairy farms offer copious space for cow comfort in high-tech stables with 700 cows per unit. Greenport Shanghai. This is how China, in cooperation with Dutch entrepreneurs and experts, is taking the lead in 21st century innovative metropolitan agriculture by creating a circular economy.
Sorry to see, guys, that Nordi had problems with the audio again. Hope not many people encountered this. This is really a matter of your internet connection and not on our technical side. But again, the films are on YouTube, and this was an edited version, a very short version. There's an 8-minute version on YouTube, and you can also see it on the website www.greenportshanghai.com. Well, Greenport Shanghai is an agri-park project that exists only on paper, so you can't visit it. But it takes this agri-park concept to, I think, really a next level. Not only by its size, but also by the fact that it is tried to, or it was designed for China. Now it's not an unfair thing to say that the current level of production in China is of a different standard than that of Northwest Europe. And while, for instance, the farmers in New Mixed Farm were thinking about things like not or doing away with the castration of piglets and not using antibiotics anymore in their production system, things like animal welfare are not really an option or not really an issue for the Chinese. That's what we encountered when we were designing this master plan. So if we have a look at Greenport Shanghai, keep in mind that Shanghai is a showcase for what we just discussed, such a mega city in a delta. And Shanghai is really built on very fertile land. And there was one region in the Shanghai metropolitan region, or one district, that was still green, and that still is green. And that's an island, and that island is called Chongming Island, Chongmingdao in Chinese. And the Chinese government, the Shanghainese government, started to think about what are we going to do with this island, and they decided to develop it, but to develop it in a very planned way. That's a thing that's still possible in China, of course. And they said, we don't want all the real estate developers to take up that land and develop it like the rest of Shanghai. We want to really safeguard the green function of that island, because it's still an agricultural island. And they were started planning for a green, a recreational, but also an agricultural production facilities on that island. And they started thinking about what they called eco-cities. And Greenport Shanghai was envisioned to be the production unit next to an eco-city on Chongming Island. And it was envisioned to be a really sustainable way of producing large numbers of food on a very small area, and thus very intensive, but still on a very sustainable way. Because the Chinese were looking for ways to produce more food. Shanghai is one of the quickly growing cities. They were also trying to find ways to produce better food, and as you might know, China has been having a lot of problems with food production. Some scandals, you might remember the melamine scandal in dairy. And they are also looking for safe foods. And at the same time, we have to do with less space, with less energy, because there are still a lot of energy blackouts, especially in the outer parts of the Shanghai metropolitan region, and with less nutrients. So then the idea started of Greenport Shanghai, and what one of our Shanghai partners, the Shanghai Industrial Investment Corporation, did is they invited a group of scientists from the Netherlands, primarily from Wageningen University, to work with them on designing the master plan for Greenport Shanghai. And if you think back to New Mixed Farm and now think about Greenport Shanghai is then in that sense really big. It's a 28 hectare piece of land, and it not only consists of primary production units for dairy, for chicken, for pigs, and aquaculture for fish, but also it consists of a processing park that really adds value to the primary products, and trade and logistics center, because that's also a part of the Chinese agricultural chain that is very, well, not good enough developed yet. There's hardly any cold chain management, for instance, in Shanghai. So it's also a problem to keep the qualities that you are trying to produce in your or organize in your product, and keep the qualities in the rest of the production chain. So in that sense, Greenport Shanghai is a really integral thing to organize. And again, it has a CPU, a central processing unit, like that bioenergy plant in the New Mixed farm, but again of a much bigger scale. And it can process 460,000 tons of waste, 1.7 million tons of biomass, and generate 443 million kilowatt hours of electricity. And 400 million kilowatt hours of electricity from that biomass. So large numbers of electricity can be produced, and that number could easily be further enlarged if the CPU would not only use the material flows of the agropark itself, but also use material flows from the rest of the city of Shanghai or of that island Chongmingdao. That central processing unit also organizes water purification. There were solar and wind panels, so that's really also in terms of energy production and water purification a very interesting proposition to make. So this is what you can think of when you start about thinking about implementing the concept of agropark or thinking about sustainable intensification. But I have to say, and I told you already, the Greenport Shanghai only exists on paper. This shows what is possible, but we have also encountered that it is difficult to realize, especially from scratch on. The idea of a greenport originates from the Dutch greenports that are primarily production units in horticulture, but those greenports know an evolutionary development. So these greenports originated 20 or 30 years ago and are by now integrated. Designing and implementing a thing like this from scratch on is quite difficult to do. However, we do think that this is part of our future, and more we think that especially in developing countries, it is a possibility to organize things like that, but it will require at first the current farmers to professionalize their production, to relocate some of them and spatially cluster them, and then again start thinking about really integration, closing loops, and acting as the sum of its parts. Well, I have to look at my time. I only have 5 minutes left, and I still have to talk to you about the value creation model, but we discussed it already for quite a large part. You might remember for the first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks that the value creation model focuses on the unique selling points of your concept. You focus on what kind of results, not only results in terms of the number of food that you want to produce, but also in the other piece, so not only focusing on profit, but also on people and planet. It helps you focus on or think about what are the investments that are needed to realize these results, and not only in terms of investment, but also what kind of competencies do I need to train myself in to make this real. If we quickly look at the value creation model of New Mixed Farm, that went a bit too fast. Yep, there we are. The unique selling points of New Mixed Farm are a large volume to a high sustainability standard, and at least for the chickens with the integrated slaughterhouse chain integration. By doing that, we are creating a value for residual and byproducts. That's the opportunity that's opened up, and that results in what we just described, the 3P values: planet, people, profit. Sustainable energy, improved animal welfare, better employment, better profits, also from other kind of activities like the energy production. It would require, however, to respond, and not only respond to it, but really be proactive on public needs. And the investments that were needed by these farmers not only focus on the innovative technology, but also for a very, very large part on the communication and lobbying. Not only communication to the formal partners, like the government that had to give the formal licenses, but also communication with their direct neighbors, with NGOs, societal groups, and they really had a tough job in that. The competencies needed here were team building, because these were traditional farmers that are only focused on their own business, and now they are starting to work as one collective company with a shared bio plant, and integrated thinking was needed. I'll quickly go forward to the Greenport Shanghai value creation model. Looks for large part similar. Unique selling point, closed, big volume, smallest possible service area, without result P efficiency. The investments needed were knowledge and expertise of P efficiency then, and that had a lot to do with chain management, with logistics and marketing, and safeguarding the concept of Greenport Shanghai being more than the sum of its parts really required what we called multi-layered governance, where not only the individual farmers or agricultural entrepreneurs are active, but a park management facility is active that tries to safeguard the concept and also try to steer on that concept. For instance, in who is in and who is out on this agropark. It requires completely new competencies on permanent development. You have to permanently adapt to changing situations, chain and network management, and professional entrepreneurships. And for many farmers, especially in China, but also in other developing countries, entrepreneurship is a completely new set of skills. While they were at first focusing on their agricultural skill sets, now they have to focus on their entrepreneurial skill sets. Important learnings of today. I think that we showed you that the challenge of sustainably feeding the world in 2050 is so complex that we need multiple approaches. There is not one silver bullet. It's not urban agriculture, it's not just intensive industrial agriculture, it's not just peri-urban agriculture, and it's not just metropolitan agriculture. There are very different approaches, and we showed you two examples all on one strategy on sustainable intensification. And we think that indeed an indispensable contribution can be made by intensive industrial agriculture, but there's a big if. That kind of agriculture needs to be based on a redesign based on sustainability criteria. Only those kinds of agriculture really will prove to have a license to grow. Otherwise, we will be sticking with all the negatives that you put in the chat box when I asked you about what your concerns are related to industrial agriculture. And it's important then to say that scale is the result of choices made, not the starting point. I skipped quickly over the quote by Yoda from Star Wars that said, "Size matters not. Look at me, judge me by my size, do you?" It's not a matter of scale, it's a matter of sustainability performance. And that brings us to the question that technical inventions for sustainable intensification, and today's presentation had a lot to do with technical inventions for doing more with less, but those can only be successful when embedded in a societal dialogue. We said that the metropolitan region offers you a unique environment to stimulate these kind of innovations, and co-creating new approaches with unlikely allies, for instance with your neighbors, with an NGO that might have been opposing you for a very long time, that opens up the opportunity to really learn from each other, take each other seriously, and thus collectively better address the complex, even wicked problems we are faced with. That is what we wanted to share with you today. There is an assignment for this week, and you can post all your remarks on the forum, and the assignment is this: reflect on the strategies you have learned about in weeks 2 to 4. Select a strategy that fits best with your project that you identified in week 1, and describe how the strategy applies to your project. That's the assignment for week 4. Post your submissions to the forum.